If we're gonna have an argument, are raising the point of Steam and GOG as platforms are not are trying to say that essentially that we're willing to accept digital only in one situation, so why not the other, and everything, and you're trying to imply that this is somehow proof that even those of us that have gone digital have accepted, digital only and, in some form or another. But that is not a good argument, and it's not a good argument because it falls foul of the false equivalence fallacy. In other words, you're trying to make it out as if you're comparing apples to apples, but in reality, even if it has the superficial appearance of comparing it apples to apples, it's not actually comparing apples to apples. It's comparing apples to oranges, so to speak. And the reason why, Sony would be the apple and PC would be the an orange is that, in PC land, like there, for instance, on Steam, we have assurances from Gabe that when a game gets delisted, the game, you just won't be able to buy the game anymore. But if you've already bought it, you'll still be able to download it. And then there are emulators because of the open nature of the platform where, permissionless innovation is possible on in PC land and everything. You don't have to ask for permission to launch a program and everything, and you can even create your own infrastructure to distribute your binaries and everything if you have to go if GitHub won't host them. And um so the the thing about PC land and everything that makes it so fundamentally different is that, Gabe, like I said, he's gone out of his way to make to reassure us that we won't lose access to what we paid for from him. And then you've got GOG as a platform where you're able to buy, DRM free, like the actual game itself, so that you can burn it to a disk if you want, it to be on your own physical media. I mean, if you really want to do it that way and everything, you can make redundant physical backups of those executables if you so choose, because you've got, complete control over them. This is not the case in PlayStation land. PlayStation has not given us any reassurances, and the legalese of the contracts basically state that these are temporary access rights at best that can be revoked at the sole discretion of Sony as a company, and Sony has proven time and time again that they cannot be trusted with digital only purchases because they are perfectly willing to revoke people's access to things that they paid for. Sony is a great company in terms of a lot of the hardware that they produce. They are trustworthy in that extent because they are reliable, but they are just not the same and not reliable on the front of basically, buying uh, digital only purchases from them. And Sony's executives may only pay attention to the sales numbers, but they never even begin to ask why those sales numbers might reflect the reality that they bought. So the thing is that I am a physical only buyer at this point. Like on the consoles, I really will go out of my way, to avoid buying a digital copy of things. And, the reason for this is, if I buy a physical, I can resell it, if I so choose and everything. I have ownership over that and everything. And I really strongly would prefer that over convenience, even. Ownership is even more important than convenience to me. And so, I really do. I really only buy physical and everything. And, I have one game that I bought for the PlayStation 5, which was Metaphor Refantaso, and that was it. And a lot of that was just to say thank you to Atlas for producing this game, and everything, and to give them an incentive to keep making games like that. That's really the only reason why I bought it. And, to say the least, I bought a physical copy of it, and that was it from them. And I at this point, And as of 2026 and August and everything, I have seen Sony revoke people's access to content they bought and paid for multiple times. And so I think that Sony is not trustworthy with a digital only future. The PC is an open platform in a way that the PlayStation is not. The PlayStation is a closed ecosystem where, in order to launch, goods and games on it and everything and software, you need authorization and a dev kit from Sony, itself. The PC in on the PC, if you're a developer, you can launch software into the ecosystem without authorization from anybody. It's a competitive, open platform where, the firms that are selling games on it have to compete with one another. It is not the same as what Sony is trying to do. Sony is a closed ecosystem where, there's no real competition over launching titles on that particular platform. And you know, on top of that reality, there's not, Sony isn't. Sony is abusing the legal contract process. The things that the fine print basically stipulate that you are not really you're not really truly purchasing the game. You're purchasing like a temporary access token that can be revoked at Sony's sole discretion whenever they so choose, whenever it is convenient for them to revoke access to a game you bought and paid for from them. And so the bottom line of this is that, PC is not comparable. Buying digital only on PC is not comparable to buying digital only on the PlayStation. And PlayStation has and Sony have proven that they cannot be trusted with a digital only future, time and time again.